I'm Lena Ali, and I'll be talking about my project today. The title is Will Use of Clicker Training Increase Engagement in an Anxious 3-Year-Old Cat? So, introduction, I chose this study because Pierre, my 3-year-old cat who has anxiety, was not engaging in the target behavior when I was training him. I was trying to get him to sit, and he was just not really sitting. He would sit after a while um, after I said the SD multiple times. So I wanted to be sure that clicker training was going to be effective before I continued implementing it, since it is a more intrusive method of training. My research question was, will 5 minutes of daily clicker training increase sitting and staying behavior for a house cat? Pierre is 3 years old. He is a house cat. He's an indoor cat. He was diagnosed with anxiety, and everything we did was conducted in the home where he always is, so just his natural environment. The reason I wanted to do this again because he did not answer to commands in a timely manner, and I felt like that put his safety at risk. So like if the door was open or something and I told him to sit, he would not listen. So he could walk out or whatever. Um, there's a lot of compelling research on clicker training, whether that be with humans or animals, but I did not find any on specifically anxious animals. But Rachel A's study is called Clicker Training Increases Exploratory Behavior and Time Spent at the Front of the Enclosure in Shelter Cats. And they looked at the implications for the cat's welfare and their adoption rates because of that. Um, so the method I used for the study was I collected data on paper sheets. They had the date and the day of the week, and I just counted how many tallies, how many SDs I gave before he sat down. Sorry, excuse me. The independent variable was, of course, the clicker training, and the dependent variable was how many SDs I gave before he engaged in sitting down. The design I used for my graph, as you can see, was ABAB, a reversal design. The baseline phase, the procedure was just giving the SD every 5 seconds until Pierre engaged in the target response, which was sitting, and then I gave him a treat. The intervention phase was the exact same, but I would click the clicker when he sat and then also give him a treat. Um, And I have a note that I only conducted trials if he was engaged and was motivated by the tree. So if he was walking away, I would not continue the trial. I would just stop and not count that one because he wasn't motivated. The results, Pierre's behavior was very different. During baseline, he looked around a lot and he meowed, and it seemed like he really wasn't sure what was happening. He did not engage in the target behavior in a timely manner. I had to give like 6 SDs sometimes. Um, but in the intervention phase, he was always oriented towards me, and he sat after 1 SD for most of the trials. As we can see in the graph over here, the intervention did improve his behavior because in the baseline, we have a high number of SDs, and then when we go to the intervention phase, it goes down to 1. And then when we go back to baseline, the number of SDs I'm giving goes back up. And then when I introduce the clicker again, they go back down to 1 again. Um, So from the graph and the observations, like I talked about, of Pierre's behavior, we can see that the clicker was a helpful tool for him and that we will continue to use it. That is what I've learned from this, is that obviously the clicker helps him in some way. It helps him know what he needs to do. So as it is decreasing the amount of SDs I need to give and the time between the SD and the engagement and the response, we will continue to be using it. Um, This will help the field because we can continue to build on this study and, either with anxious animals or just animals in general that we know that clicker training is definitely useful for them, and um, it is not aversive to an anxious cat. One thing I would change is how I structured the trials. I limited myself to 5 minutes a day, and I don't feel like I needed to set it up that way. I could have just had it be trials, so I could have done like 5 trials in the same day and just tracked that as different trials instead of tracking it by day. And then my references, as I mentioned earlier, is the article from Rachel Grant, Jennifer Rose, Clicker Training, Increasing Exploratory Behavior and Time Spent at the Front of Enclosure in Shelter Cats, and the implication of those things on the cat's welfare and their adoption rates, which I believe it increased the adoption rates and the welfare of the cats. Thank you.